Today we're going to learn about chain rule problems. Let's say we have a problem like this. Solve for d dx of a, e to the 5x plus 7x squared plus 3 power. So before we get started, we first have to figure out how to start this problem. So how do we find the derivative when it's not just e to the x? Well, the answer to that is using the chain rule. The chain rule is if g of x is equal to h of f of x, forgot to write that, so this only applies when g of x is equal to h of f of x, then that means that g prime of x would be equal to h prime of f of x times f prime of x. So let's go over what this means. Let's say you have a function, g of x, which is a composition of two functions, h of x and f of x. So to find the derivative of this whole function, which as we know is g of x, the derivative would be g prime of x is equal to the derivative of the outer function, but you still have to keep the values of f of x within that function because it says h prime of f of x. So instead of having the outer function, let's say, was e to the x, so let's say we have the function e to the 5x power. We know that there are two functions within this one function, e to the x and 5x. So according to the chain rule, you take the outer function, which we know is e to the x, and you take the derivative of e to the x. We know that the derivative of e to the x is e to the x. But according to the chain rule, we can't leave it like this because we have to plug in the values for f of x within x. So this is still the composition. So this is still a form of composition. So then we plug in the value of f of x, which we know is the inner function, which is 5x. And then we have to multiply by the derivative of the inner function. The derivative of 5x is 5. So we multiply to get 5e to the 5x power would be the derivative of e to the 5x power. So, let's solve problem A. We can split this up into two different functions. E to the x, oops, let me get a better marker. E to the x and 5x plus 7x squared plus 3. So we don't have to do this out on paper every time, we can do it in our head. We just have to remember which ones are the outer functions and which ones are the inner functions. One way to remember this is that whatever function comes first, or whatever one is erased, is the inner function, whichever one comes first is the outer function. So as you can see, h prime of x, or h of f of x would be e to the 5x plus 7x squared plus 3. So now we have to take the derivative. So we know that the outer function is e to the x. The derivative of e to the x is e to the x. And we know that instead of saying e to the x, we have to plug in our f of x values. So we have to plug in 5x plus 7x squared plus 3. And then we have to multiply this by the derivative of the inner function, which is 5x plus 7x squared plus 3. The derivative of that is 5 plus 14x. So, the answer to this problem is d dx is equal to 5x plus 7x squared plus 3 times 5 plus 14, 14x. So once again, the answer to this problem is d dx is equal to e to the 5x plus 7x squared plus 3 power times 5 plus 14x.